Zero. Hey, there it is. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty, but we are back at the What the Fuck America podcast. I am Jake, along with Matt.
Yo.
And we are going to continue this part 2 of Dr. Anthony motherfucking Fauci.
Fraudulent Fouchy.
Yep, fraudulent Fauci.
I just kind of like saying his name.
It is a kind of a cool name, I have to admit.
Yeah.
It's sad he's such a piece of shit. So, when we last left off, it was kind of a little bit of a happenstance. On Monday, right after we recorded that podcast of Dr. Fauci on Sunday. And Monday, there was a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act is what FOIA stands for, into Dr. Fauci's emails, and about 3,000 emails leaked. Yeah. Which essentially go on to prove everything we said. We'll cover a little bit of the email leaks here. But I think we're going to just hop into his AIDS pandemic that he blundered as well.
Seems to be a pattern with this man.
Yeah. Now, I'm not sure if it's malice or incompetence, but I'm going to lean towards a little bit of both.
I'm going to say mostly incompetence. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
All right. And then, so we know this is kind of a boring format. But next time, whenever we do a deep dive into someone or something, we will try to pull the relevant parts of the article and try not to bore you guys to death with all the substance and context you guys don't need.
Yeah, we'll go a little. It's just so we can kind of cover our asses where someone's like, oh, they're making this up, but it's like we're reading it to you.
Yep.
So there you go.
All right. So here is an Economic Institute for Economic Research article. Fauci was duplicitous on the AIDS pandemic too. All right. So in May 1983, amid the rapidly escalating AIDS crisis, let me move this article over so I don't have to fucking crane my neck like a dumbass. Among the rapidly escalating AIDS crisis, a doctor at the National Institute of Health, the NIH, promoted a stunning theory about the newly encountered disease in the Journal of American Medical Association. Noting that the same issue of the journal contained an article documenting one of the first cases of its immunodeficiency. Yep, I don't know. I was saying autoimmune, not even the word auto there. Immunodeficiency disease appearance in an infant. The author sounded an alarm about the possibility that routine close contact, as within a family household, can spread the disease. The article took an increasingly speculative turn in promoting this new theory. If indeed the latter is true, then AIDS takes on an entirely new dimension, it continued. If we add to the possibility that non-sexual, non-blood-borne transmission is possible, the scope of the syndrome may be enormous. Although the article reiterated the need to be cautious in accepting these findings, as they awaited more evidence, the discovery should at least alert us to the possibility that we are dealing with AIDS in children, as transmitted through routine interaction. The author of the article has since attained widespread familiarity. It was Dr. Anthony Fauci, a rising star within the NIH bureaucracy. Press accounts noticing Fauci's article immediately sounded the alarm. Household contact can transmit AIDS. Read one nationally syndicated report on the UPI wire dated May 5th, 1983. The Associated Press queried. That's the word. Queried.
Yes.
The next day, does AIDS spread by routine contact? And quoted Fauci as their lead authority. The New York Times raised the specter of household transmission between family members, invoking Fauci's commentary as its main authority. All right, so we now know, of course, that Fauci's theory was wrong. HIV, the virus that was later discovered to cause AIDS, only transmitted by exposure to infected bodily fluids such as blood or by sexual contact. The infant infected, discussed in the JAM, the Journal of American Medical Association. I lost my spot. The JAM issue involve vertical transmission from the mother to child during pregnancy. Interesting. I didn't know that would be called vertical transmission. You learn something new every day.
Right.
The damage was done through, as the media went to work, stroking alarms about AIDS transmission through simple routine contact. Hundreds of newspapers disseminated the distressing theory from Fauci's article. Writing a few weeks later, conservative columnist Pat Buchanan enlisted Fauci as the centerpiece of a rebuttal against Health and Human Services Secretary Margaret Heckler, who told him there is no evidence that the general population is threatened by the spread of AIDS. On July 14th, both Buchanan's column and an excerpt of Fauci's article were entered into the congressional recording, along with moralizing commentary that assigned blame for the disease to homosexual establishments and gatherings. Interesting. Unfounded fears of transmission risk through simple contact and accompanying social ostracization of the disease victims became one of the most notorious and harmful missteps of the entire AIDS crisis. It might be tempting to chalk Fauci's error up to the scientific uncertainty of a novel disease. Medicine advances by investigating all plausible theories, subjecting them to testing, and ruling out those that lack evidence. In this case, however, the more likely candidate was scientific negligence and unwarranted alarmist speculation. Journalist Randy Schiltz? I think that says Schiltz.
Schiltz.
Yep, Schiltz. Journalist Randy Schiltz documented the incident in his classic Early History on AIDS Crisis and the Band Played On, which I believe is the title of his book. Immunologist. I am fucking awful with names. Ari? Let's go with Ari.
Yeah.
Ari Rubenstein had already offered a more plausible explanation for the infant case, which even cursory examination would verify: the disease transmitted from the mother to the baby during pregnancy. As Schiltz explained, upon investigation, Rubenstein learned that Anthony Fauci had not bothered to read his paper. The NIH scientist instead relied on secondhand information from another researcher to indulge in open-ended speculation. For a long excerpt of Schlitz, see David Henderson's post on Fauci's early career, which is just a little bracketed quotation there. Yeah. Although his speculative commentary had triggered a national media frenzy over unfounded fears of AIDS transmissions through routine contact, Fauci himself emerged relatively unscathed from the episode. He did so by deploying an all-too-familiar tactic from his COVID-19 commentary: the political pivot executed in front of a fawning news media, which we will get to later on in the episode. On June 26, less than 2 months after his JAMA article appeared, Fauci publicly contradicted its most irresponsible claim, albeit without ever acknowledging his own central role in promoting that claim to begin with. As he told the Baltimore Sun, it is absolutely preposterous to suggest that AIDS can be contracted through normal social contact, like being in the same room with someone or sitting on a bus with them.
But that's what he
Gee,
said before.
he just fucking. Oh my
Like,
lord.
he literally contradicted. It's almost like he didn't know what he wrote.
Yeah. Jeez.
He just put his name on a book, some random, or on a freaking piece of paper. Maybe he bullied someone into writing the paper for him,
Maybe.
and they just totally jacked him on it.
Yeah. Um. The poor gays have received a very raw deal on this. In short, that's the end of the quote. So let me read that again. As he told the Baltimore Sun, it is absolutely preposterous to suggest that AIDS can be contracted through normal social contact, like being in the same room with someone or sitting on a bus with them. The poor gays have received a very raw deal in this. In short, Fauci flip-flopped with the political winds, and the press barely even noticed. It's a similar pattern to anyone who has closely followed the infectious disease bureaucrats' public commentary since COVID-19 burst into the national news cycle last January. It usually starts with Anthony Fauci fielding a question about a disease from the press, at which point he offers up a highly speculative answer that nonetheless appears to carry the gravity of its own authority. So I think this one is all just going into...
It's just basically confirming what we were talking about on the last episode, that he is a fucking moron, and he did this all the way in 83 and 84.
Yep.
And then what year was that part? This is his whole career.
Yeah.
As soon as he gets into this NIH, NIAID shit, because didn't he start directing that in like 84?
Something like that.
You know what I mean? Like, come on. And I get it. You studied this disease. You're not the only one, but you're the freaking face that runs the place when it comes to it, right?
Yep. All right. So we'll go on to this next article because that one pretty much just goes into coronavirus and all his bullshit on that, which we did that previously, and there's no need to rehash all of that.
Yeah. We'll get crazy again.
Yeah. So we have whitewashing AIDS history. Dr. Anthony Fauci is rewriting history. He is doing so to disguise his shameful role in delaying promotion of an AIDS treatment that would have prevented tens of thousands of deaths in the first year of the epidemic. In my book, Body Counts, a memorial of political, sex, AIDS, and survival, I recount how slow the federal government was in publicizing the use of Bactrim and other sulfa drugs to prevent sulfa drugs to prevent PCP, the pneumonia that was the leading killer of people with AIDS, in addition to a long time and well-known use to treat PCP.
Yeah, because that was pneumonia. That's like how
Feral coccal pneumonia.
Yeah,
probably I think is what it was called.
I forget.
Pneumococcal. Yeah, something like that.
That.
I point to Dr. Fauci in particular because he was and remains today the head of the NIAID and the head of the federal government's AIDS research program in 1987. Pioneering AIDS activist Michael Callan begged Fauci for help in promoting the use of Bactrim as PCP prophylaxis and issuing interim guidelines urging physicians to prophylaxis those patients deemed at high risk for PCP. Fauci has taken exception to my account of the incident in the comments. In comments to the Washington Blade, he offered his version of the story. And I quote, So what actually happened is that Michael came to me and said, there's this preliminary activity and some small trial that Bectrim works, Fauci said. Would you like to come out and make a guideline to say it should be used by everybody? And I said, Michael, I can't do that, but what I can do is help design and make sure that the guarantees that we fund in the clinical trial in Bectrim to prove or not that it was safe and effective, he said. But I didn't blow him off and say I don't want to issue guidelines. The fact is that neither within my purview nor within the responsibility or authority I have to issue guidelines. End quote. Whether Fauci personally had the authority or not isn't the point. His excuse would be laughable if it wasn't so tragic. He was constantly traveling and speaking to the media and opining about every issue related to AIDS research and treatments. In Arthur Kahn's book, Winter War, Larry Kramer pointed out that to get an appointment with Fauci, one didn't call his secretary, but his press officers, whose book talks and interviews like movie stars. Who book his talks and interviews like movie stars. He could easily have advocated awareness of the preventative treatment as the de facto federal AIDS czar. His influence was and is enormous. Had Fauci listened to people with AIDS and the clinicians treating them and responded accordingly, he could have saved thousands of lives in the 2 years between 1987, when Kellen met with Fauci, and 1989, when the guidelines were ultimately issued. Nearly 17,000 people with AIDS suffocated from PCP. Most of these people might have lived had Fauci responded appropriately. When Kellen and others, including Dr. Barry Gingell, a medical advisor to Gay Men's Health Crisis, met with Fauci to plead for his support, they didn't just say there was this preliminary activity and some trials, as Fauci claimed. They explained that many frontline AIDS physicians following the lead of Dr. Joseph Sonnabend were already using Bactrim effectively to prevent the reoccurrence of PCP. The science was clear. A decade before, clinical trials by Dr. Walter Hughes had proven its efficiency in preventing PCP and other autoimmune. Why do I keep saying autoimmune? Immune-compromised populations like children with leukemia. For some reason, anytime I see the word immune, I just need to put the word auto in front of it.
Yeah, because we've been hearing a lot of autoimmune things.
Yeah. Hughes suggests that Bectrim prophylaxis should be used whenever the reoccurrence rate of PCP was over 15%. Sonnabend and community clinicians had demonstrated that the reoccurrence rate of PCP and AIDS was over 60% within the year following the first episode. If ever there was a group in urgent need of a recommendation for Bectrim prophylaxis, it was people with AIDS. Fauci refused to acknowledge the evidence, and according to one account, even encouraged people with AIDS to stop taking treatments like Bectrim that weren't specifically approved for use in people with AIDS. Longtime treatment activist Richard Jeffrey wrote in 2001 that Fauci went as far as telling activists attending a 1987 meeting that there was no data to suggest PCP prophylaxis was beneficial and that it may in fact be dangerous. Fauci's close colleague, Dr. Samuel Broder, who was head of the National Cancer Institute, even suggested, that sounds about right, in the absence of any evidence at all that the newly introduced antiretroviral
Antiretroviral.
AZT would make prophylaxis against CPC redundant. In his comments to The Blade, Fauci fails to mention how skeptical he was of Bactrim as a preventative treatment. He questioned the existing science, was unswayed by how frontline clinicians were treating people with AIDS, and had suggested stopping a treatment that was already saving lives. Sonnabend wrote in 2006, why in the case of AIDS was Bactrim a known preventative measure against PCP introduced so many years after a need for it had been recognized? To this must be added the question of why was this neglected, the consequence of which can be measured in the tens of thousands of lives lost, has received almost no attention. If we didn't tell the truth about the history of the AIDS epidemic, it will be subject to more whitewashing, more distortion, and more rewriting to suit the legacies of the officials in charge. And as we know, Dr. Fauci is still one of those officials in charge.
Yeah, back then, he was like they thought, the activists thought he was incompetent then. We think he's incompetent now.
Yep.
He's a tool of the medical establishment. That's what he is.
Gotta be. Yeah,
You know?
he definitely is a tool.
So I'm gonna kind of bullshit with you for a minute here. Basically what we're saying is these articles are saying that there have been proven treatments, and this dude blocked those things, and it's the same thing with the hydroxychloroquine and everything that happened during COVID, saying you could get it by touching each other. He didn't know what the hell he's talking about. Someone gives him a piece of paper. He's a tool. That's all he does. He reads. Just like we're doing. So, we got quite a few articles for you. We'll make a sandbox episode coming up soon. Jake went to urinate.
Yep. Some of us had to go take a pee. Fantastic.
I was just kind of mentioning that, it kind of goes along with what we've been dealing with in 2020,
Yeah.
With the whole COVID bullshit. He was incompetent then, telling people, "Oh, don't touch each other, stay this far apart," Yeah. Adding to the scare, right? Because it was
Pretty
people
much,
were scared. People that are just living life and just going about their business that aren't listening to these people go, "Holy shit, who's this guy?" all of a sudden, right? Or, "Oh, I remember my parents were talking about this guy back when the AIDS happened," right?
Yep.
And because of a 24-hour news cycle, there's a narrative. He gets a piece of paper. I don't think he knows a fucking thing. Or he knows all of the fucking things.
Yeah.
And he's playing really fucking good stupid. But then again, he's another one that's too old to do his job. So I leave it in your hands.
We here are ageist at the What the Fuck America podcast.
I'm just saying, if people are expected to retire between the ages of 65 and 70, right? I mean, that's kind of sounds right?
Yep.
Why the fuck are these people in there? I mean, everybody that's in charge, air quotes, in charge of the federal government right now is above the age of 70.
Yep.
I mean, come on, dude.
Well, I think our
president looks like a fucking cyborg, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. All right.
Bring on Ultron.
Yeah, bring on Ultron.
Just destroy the whole fucking planet, man. Jesus Christ. Meanwhile, all of us are being lied to by these professionals, right?
Yep. Well, and he's an unelected official.
Unelected.
He's an unelected official who because he thought I don't know, because these emails came out. So we might not, the more I'm looking at these articles, the more they're mostly just repeating what we already read. So I might jump around here and we might just go off the cuff a little bit here today.
Yeah.
But he's an unelected official who has said, where was it? Let me find this stupid ass fucking thing.
I'm going to just point out,
where'd it go?
He was not
Where'd
elected.
it go?
He can be fired.
I had an article here.
He could be fired.
And I think it's just so stupid.
And you left.
So January 21,
and we lost
2020.
Fauci
said the virus is not a major threat for people of the United States, and it's not something that the citizens of the United States should worry about right now. January 26th, 2020, the American people should not be worried or frightened by this. It's very, very low risk to the United States, but it's something that we as public health officials need to take very seriously. January 31st, we still have a low risk to the American public, but we want to keep it at a low risk. February 3rd, 2020, I think you are going to see a dampening down. February 17th, 2020, I don't think people should be too frightened. The risk right now, today currently, is relatively low right now. Don't worry about it. Be more concerned about influenza, he added, that the danger of the virus was just minuscule, and you should skip the mask unless you are contagious. February 28th, I don't think it's going to be bad because I think we'll be able to do some kind of mitigation. It could be mild. February 29th, right now, at this moment, there's no need to change anything that you're doing on a day-to-day basis because, you can get AIDS by touching your mom and kissing your grandma. March 10th, 2020, as a nation, the risk is relatively low. Well, which is it, Fauci? Because then as soon as that, I think it was March 14th, then we went into 15 days to slow the spread or whatever it was. I think it might have been 15 days to slow the spread.
I'm looking for the thing I have here. Yeah, freaking. He said a lot of things really fast, right? So it was in February, we did, let's see, 21st. Did you already go through January?
Yep.
Okay, so it was all of January. Then February, it was the risk was minuscule, right?
Yep.
Nothing. March 8th, it was right now in the United States, people who are not infected should not be walking around with masks.
Yep. Which we have these, and actually let's go into this Louder with Crowder one. We'll just go ahead and touch on this. So here we have Fauci's emails. BuzzFeed News and Washington Post filed a Freedom of Information Act for Fauci's emails from January to June 2020, where he said a bunch of bullshit. Gain of function. Fauci, the director of the NIAID, didn't know if the NIH had ties to gain of function research abroad. The email sent to Fauci from NIAID Principal Deputy Director Hugh, no idea what that name is. We're just going to call him Hugh. Reads, the paper you sent me says the experiments were performed before the gain of function pause, but have since been reviewed and approved by NIH. Not sure what that means since Emily is sure that no coronavirus work has gone through the P3 framework. She will try to determine if we have any distant ties to this abroad. And then you have masks and vaccines. On February 5th, 2020, Fauci wrote to Sylvia Brewell about the inefficiency of masks. But more interesting is the focus on vaccines. Money is better spent on medical countermeasures such as diagnostics and vaccines. So I'll read the email quick. Sylvia, masks are really for infected people to prevent them from spreading infection to the people who are not infected, rather than protecting uninfected people from acquiring infection. The typical mask you buy in the drugstore is not really effective in keeping out the virus, which is small enough to pass through the material. It might, however, provide some slight benefit in keeping out gross droplets if someone coughs or sneezes on you. They do not recommend that you wear a mask, particularly since you are going to a very low-risk location. Your instincts are correct. Money is better spent on countermeasures such as diagnostics and vaccines. Safe travels. Best regards, Tony. And then we have on April 3rd, 2020, expressed his enthusiasm about collaborating with Bill and Melinda Gates on COVID response writing. And here is this one. Emilio, thanks for your note. As I had mentioned to Bill yesterday evening, I am enthusiastic about moving towards a collaborative and hopefully synergistic approach to COVID-19 on the part of the NIAID slash NIH, BARDA, and BMGF, which is Bill Melinda Gates Foundation.
Or the big motherfucking gay foundation.
I will ask John Mascola and Emily E. to connect with you to stay in conversation. Perhaps they can organize a call with you, including BARDA. What is BARDA? I will try to engage as much as I can, given my current circumstance. We look forward to working with you. Best regards, Tony. Fauci is also a member of the Bill and Melinda Gates Decade of Vaccine Leadership Council. As reported by Axios on June 2020, the NIH owns intellectual property used by Moderna in the development of the COVID-19 vaccination, which is quite interesting, to say the least. So long story short, so we're already a half hour in. One last quick thing. We'll do the British doctor story. The British doctor, in his secret campaign to gag the COVID lab leak theory, he worked in Wuhan and manipulated coronaviruses, yet orchestrated a campaign to clear it of blame and tried to hide his tracks. So let's go ahead and read this little quick story about this fuckface. So if you remember last week, Peter Daszak, we'll say his name is, Mail revealed Peter Daszak, right. 55, has links with Chinese scientists in the Wuhan lab. The British expert on zoonotics spillover, viruses jumping from animals to humans, who was among those who signed the Lancet letter condemning lab leak theory. He also worked in the so-called pandemic prevention and the manipulation of coronaviruses, admitting that they can be manipulated very easily in a 2019 podcast. Dr. Daszak was appointed to the World Health Organization's Wuhan 2021 delegation, while the Lancet has its own close relationship with Chinese science community. And then leaked emails and intelligence reports continue to challenge the pandemic's origin. So this Daszak guy, the WHO, the World Health Organization, which is owned by China, not literally owned by China, but China has their hands up them like a fucking puppet. Peter Daszak, who was the head of the economic lab, whatever the fuck, basically the organization that gave money to the Wuhan lab from our federal government money. This guy was appointed to the World Health Organization Wuhan delegation to investigate if it came from a lab. And we have emails from Dr. Fauci to this guy saying, hey, thank you very much for squashing that lab leak theory and getting rid of that theory that, hey, this virus actually came from a lab, which is what we've been saying for pretty much June of last year.
Yeah. Totally.
It's just the amount of. All
Well,
right,
and
we're
people
going to.
don't see it. And people don't see it. There's
Correct.
people out there just for the and I swear to God, it's just so that they can argue with you.
Yep.
You know? Like, how do you not see that? How are you so stupid you can't see that shit? These motherfuckers need to be hung in the goddamn streets. However, nothing's gonna happen to them.
Nope.
They should actually, because of all these things that are coming out, they should actually, I won't say be arrested right away, but they should definitely have a freaking like citizens brigade fucking investigation or some shit. You
Yeah.
know? Like for real.
Yep. I mean, it's,
Why
you,
hasn't he been fired yet?
well, and that's the interesting thing too, is
Trump never fired him, and he should
nope,
have.
he should have from probably day
Huge
fucking
mistake.
one.
Yeah.
Yep.
He should have been fired as soon as he fucking said no masks. And then when they were talking to him on the freaking TV, he totally went and 180'd right in Trump's face.
You need
Right?
masks. Yep.
You need masks. It was like almost like a week later, not even a week later, all of a sudden. And then boom, that was it. I would have been like, get the fuck out of here, bro. You're done.
Yep.
Go back to your fucking laboratory, you fucking nerd.
Yeah. So let me read this last article. Shouldn't be, unless you want to take over a reading of an article.
Which one?
Do the one from the Federalist, a short history.
Man, we went all out of order. Hold on. Nope, that's not it. Oh, a short history. Here we go. A short history of how Anthony Fauci has kept failing up since 1984. Should I read that quote too?
Sure.
The media buried long-standing scientific concerns that Anthony Fauci had been sucking, in quotes, sucking money away from work to understand and counter natural disease outbreaks. This is by Ilya Fyotskinstov. Yeah. And this was in January 2021. So in 2003, terrorism. Okay, my mic's on. In 2003, terrorism was a more immediate national danger than infectious diseases. Dr. Anthony Fauci's National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease, NIAID, had just redirected $117 million from infectious diseases to fund a new anthrax vaccine effort in response to the anthrax attacks that happened a week after 9/11. The millions were just a small part of the 1.8 billion Fauci had poured into defense from bioterrorist attacks over the preceding 2 years. More than half of those funds were devoted to anthrax and smallpox alone. In 2004, Fauci launched the $5.6 billion Project BioShield, the National Institutes of Health's biggest outlay for a single research issue until then, which that sounds insane.
Yeah.
Some microbiology researchers at the time, however, according to the journal Nature, were concerned that Fauci's actions would ultimately distort priorities in infectious disease research, sucking money away from work to understand and counter natural disease outbreaks that ultimately pose a greater threat to public health. The 2003 Nature article cited a Stanford University microbiologist saying that diseases such as influenza and other respiratory tract infections routinely kill far more people than would die in a bioterrorist attack, and therefore deserve a greater share of the NIAID budget. That's very interesting. The criticism turned out to be warranted. In 2007, after spending billions under the opposite premise, Fauci admitted that at the end of the day, you're not going to kill as many people with an anthrax attack as you would if you blasted off a couple of car bombs in Times Square. His anthrax vaccine effort had failed, having been sunk by lobbying. Yeah, maybe COVID was his get back. No.
Yeah.
The anthrax vaccine failure followed on the heels of Fauci's controversial leadership of the nation's AIDS response in the 1980s and 90s. According to Good Intentions, a 1990 book by investigative author and innovation expert Bruce Nussbaum, Fauci started his career as a lackluster scientist who found his true vocation empire building. When he took the reins at NIAID in 1984. To ensure that AIDS would be his exclusive demesne within the federal government, Fauci started the most important bureaucratic battle in the history of the fight against AIDS, squeezing out more scientifically competent but less conniving administrators. According to Nussbaum, if Fauci had not won the battle, many people who died might have lived. Having won his monopoly over AIDS within the federal government, Fauci, by training an immunologist who focuses on the body fights and how the body fights infections itself, favored a vaccine approach in the fight against the then terminal illness. This understandable professional bias came at the expense of research into antiretroviral drugs that ultimately reduced AIDS from a death sentence to a chronic disease in remission, as Nussbaum wrote in 1990. So he didn't cure it.
Correct.
You can live with it.
Yep.
So all you gays out there, Dr. Fauci hates you.
Yep.
Tony Fauci's managerial incompetence had exacted a staggering cost. By 1987, more than 1 million Americans were infected by the AIDS virus. Not a single drug treatment had come out of the government's enormous biomedical research system. In the end, Fauci barely survived by handing over control of the government's only AIDS drug trial program to a pharmaceutical company. So he basically like what's happening right now, right?
Yep.
Exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
This
Trump
happens.
did Project Warp Speed, which fast tracked.
Yep. And all the pharmaceutical companies get away scot-free if anything happens to you because we are the human trial, right?
Yep.
So as a result, a single drug, AZT, was the only AIDS treatment that came out of Fauci's government research system. And only after help from the private sector in 1988, the playwright and prominent AIDS activist Larry Kramer, that's the guy I was telling you about,
Yep.
published an open letter to Dr. Anthony Fauci in the Village Voice, writing, in part, "You admitted that you are an incompetent idiot. Over the past 4 years, $374 million has been allocated for AIDS treatment research. You were in charge of spending much of that money. Yet after 3 years, you have established only a system of waste, chaos, and uselessness." So that's very interesting because even back then, people were criticizing people like that.
Yep.
But CNN wasn't able to protect them. Nah,
Well, and the interesting thing too, which we'll save this CNN article, but it also applies to all the other mainstream people.
Yeah.
But
You want me to, where was I? Okay. According to Good Intentions, in an attempt to salvage his reputation, if not his career, Fauci co-opted Kramer, becoming the well-connected activist's top ally within the federal government's public health apparatus. Kramer, in turn, was Fauci's vector to enlist American society, or into elitist American society, perfectly positioning the technocrat for his favorite role as a, in quote, a hit the front page every day kind of guy, according to an unnamed health official. Nussbaum quotes. With the AIDS treatment research strategy continuing to face setbacks, Fauci focused on developing an HIV vaccine. The quest, however, offered less and less glory as the 1990s progressed. Starting in 1995, private industry began developing effective drug therapies that would drastically reduce AIDS mortality in the developed world by the turn of the millennium. Probably because Magic Johnson probably paid for all that shit.
Yeah.
He had a
Yeah.
lot of money. Anyway, starting in 1995. Oh, yeah, I already did that, right? Mortality, making HIV vaccine much less of a potential game changer, while the bioterrorism threat restored Fauci's prominence in national politics. Neither the bioterrorism threat nor the anthrax vaccine ever materialized. Things got even worse for Fauci before they became better. On February 3rd, 2020, the journal Science reported that after almost 4 decades, Fauci's failure-ridden search for a vaccine that can stop the AIDS virus has delivered yet another frustrating defeat. According to the scientist heading the study in South Africa, there's absolutely no evidence of efficacy from the $104 million study. Years of work went into this. It's a huge disappointment. So he's got a lot of critics, and rightfully so.
Yep.
He should have been fired from that job as well.
Yep.
That's what happens when you suck all the dicks of Washington, right?
Well, and that's
So-
what happens when there's no another key issue with government. For example, let's say you have a McDonald's, a private company. Who is the one that, or who are the people that keep McDonald's in business? Their customers.
Yeah.
Yep. So let's say you have two stores, a McDonald's and a Burger King, both private companies.
Yes.
All of a sudden, 100 people just run into McDonald's.
Oh my God.
And then they serve their food. Everything's perfect. Everything's great. No one's complaining. The food's fantastic. Then the next day, 100 people, just constantly. Then all of a sudden, someone keeps on messing up people's food, making mistakes at McDonald's. Then they start losing customers. 5 here, 6 there, 10 there. Now no one's going. Now no one's going to McDonald's. You know how they solve that? By being better. Because the customers aren't forced by threat of gun, by threat of taxes, by threat of jail, by threat of force, like they are with government. They can just go to Burger King. They can just go to Chick-fil-A. They can just go to any other restaurant they want. But government is the only game in town. Government is the only thing. It's the only choice. It's the only choice, which is why in the free market, competition usually makes a better product. With the AIDS pandemic, who created the vaccine, or not the vaccine, but the treatments? And it was the private market.
Yeah, private sector. Yep.
Who created the COVID-19 vaccines?
Private sector.
Private sector. So it's one of those things where government it has no incentive to get better. It has no competition to get better. It has no reason to do better. What are we going to do? Overthrow the government?
Yeah,
Yes.
good luck with that.
Yes, we are going to overthrow the government. Hopefully one day.
I hope I'm alive long enough to see Escape from New York and Escape from LA actually happen to this country.
Well, I mean, it's kind of happening.
You know, you figure there'd be one up here, so it'd probably be like Michigan area, right?
Yep.
And there'd probably be New York, then Texas probably. Florida would probably be one. Georgia. You'd have all these fucking no-go zones, you know?
Yeah.
And then when they punish you, they're like, well, you can't be part of this society. Or some crazy ass event happens and some crazy ass Dr. Cocteau comes around like a Fauci and creates his own new utopia where everybody blows each other and can fart rainbows.
All
Anyway,
right.
Fauci admitted to Science that all those years and millions were spent on an effort that he knew was very unlikely to succeed. We were struggling for years and years, and so we grabbed onto this slightest positive effect, the potential correlate. What? A potential correlate of immunity? Oh, okay. And it looked interesting. Fauci, however, had just become unfireable with the first U.S. COVID-19 patent diagnosed only a week prior. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
I was always saying a respiratory illness like COVID-19 would be my worst nightmare, he claimed in June. Yet only a few months earlier, Fauci was telling Americans that far from being his biggest fear, the danger from the Wuhan virus was just minuscule. Remember, we went over this last time, right?
Yep. And a little bit today.
Yeah, and some today. So there's absolutely no reason whatsoever to wear a mask, quoted as saying. The media buried long-standing scientific concerns that Fauci had been sucking money away from work to understand the counter-natural disease outbreaks, right? A March 2020 whatever. There was an article published in the Washington Post style section. So a hagiography.
That sounds about right.
Hagiography. Whatever. Geography. Whatever. Published in the Washington Post style section noted how the dapper doctor is, once again these days, a hit the front page every day kind of guy.
Yep.
Seems to transcend time and space, appearing in all media at all times. The newspaper quoted House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer lamenting, "It's a shame that at the first hint of this, we didn't just say to Tony Fauci, you're in charge, you have all the power you need, tell us what needs to be done."
All right.
I'm glad someone didn't say that.
Okay. So, an unelected bureaucrat gets all the power he needs.
Yes.
So,
all right. Repeat that. I'll play Anthony Fauci. Repeat that.
All right. Tony Fauci, you're in charge. You have all the power you need. Tell us what needs to be done.
Nobody do anything I say at all because I have no idea what to do. And that's for real in his brain. Or, he would probably say, I want to be president of the United States.
Probably.
And that's it. He'd be the president. He'd have all the power in the world. He'd blow Joe Biden because, let's face it, he did all this with Joe Biden.
Yep.
Actually, I could believe Joe Biden being so mentally incompetent at this point, or what do they call that when old people start? Is it called degenerating? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think he's so gone that he might not even know he's president until they say, "Here you go, Joe. Let's go." And he's probably like, "Where's Obama?" And they're like, "Oh, he already did his speech. He's gone. You fell asleep."
Yep. The amount of drugs that guy has to be doing to stay even the least bit coherent has to be astronomical.
I swear to God, I listened to someone on a podcast saying they had like electrodes taped to his head or some shit.
I think he had a brain aneurysm.
Oh.
So if I remember right, there's actual like metal clips inside of his skull holding his brain together.
Oh. Was it like
that's our president?
They hit a button and it shocks him and he's like Manchurian Candidate, like starts doing the Hitler salute. Fucking all
Maybe.
Jews go to this fucking camp. Fuck you.
But like the sheer, so there's a clause in the Constitution, and I'm learning more about it. It's the National Welfare Clause,
Whoa.
which essentially states anything that is in the nation's interest can be done.
That means that they could come and take your house as long as they say
Exactly.
it's in the nation's
Exactly.
interest. You're on the streets because it's in the nation's best
So-
interest for you to be a slave.
What's interesting is, and I'm learning about the
Why do
so
you think prisons do so well?
yeah, it's fucking incredible. Anything that's in the national interest, the government can do. So when you have such broad, sweeping generalizations like that, it can be justified to do anything. We have to nuke Texas. We have to nuke Texas because that's in the nation's interest. Who's going to stop them? I mean, the state of Texas might actually stop them, but you know, it's one of those things where when you have such a broadly defined bullshit clause in the Constitution that says we can do what we want because it's in the nation's interest, that should not exist. That should not be allowed.
I think that the idea of democracy is like the actual, like what democracy actually is and what these deranged fucking psychopaths think it is
Mm-hmm.
are two completely different things, right?
Yep.
And like that's where I think the problem is. They're trying to install democracy into this constitutional republic.
Yep.
And then
democracy is the worst thing in the world.
It's horrible. Horrible. We're
Yep.
going to go over this. It's going to be said probably on every episode. Horrible. Nobody wants a democracy. Even if you think it sounds right. Look what happened to the fucking Jedi.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, hello. They stood for democracy, right?
Exactly.
Fuck, dude. Come on. Come on.
It's so democracy. Let's set some terms. Whenever someone says,
no, remember you said it before, 49 to 51. That's it.
yep. So whenever someone says the United States is a democracy, not true. The United States is a mix of several different styles of government. What we broadly are termed is a constitutional republic, a representative republic. So we democratically elect statewide. We democratically elect state representatives, all those people. Everything done in your state is a democracy, which is kind of okay. The way we elected senators, which is a 17th Amendment, used to be representative. You would elect your state legislature. Your state legislature would pick someone to represent the state of Wisconsin, or the state of New Jersey, or the state of Indiana, or the state of California, or the state of Montana. And that is a representative form of government. We also do not elect the president by popular vote, because then California would decide who the president is. And it would be a fucking communist every fucking year. Because California is 99% communists and 1% fucking retards.
Doesn't it kind of, but when you read like definitions like these days, like constitutional republic, right? It's almost like the federal government is unconstitutional.
So it depends on which way you want.
Because you already have your states, right? You already have your states. They have their fucking legislatures. They have their representatives for all their shit and could decide things. Then you have representatives from all those states.
Yep.
in Washington as well.
Yep.
So,
So what it's supposed to make federal laws that are in the nation's interest, which almost is impossible when you have such a diverse nation. When you look at California compared to New York, California's mountains and beaches and drugs and farmland, and New York is sky rises, massive cities, or massive city. So it's such a vast nation that it's impossible to write a law. And again, it goes down to the representation issue that I have in government. And it's even hard to represent constituencies in a state, let alone nationwide. So let's take New York City and LA. New York City and LA, you can't even find a law that equally makes sense in those places, even though they're relatively the same. Massive city, massive city, massive population, massive population. You couldn't write a law that each constituent would agree with in those states, let alone extrapolate that to the whole country. It's just not possible. So federal government shouldn't be writing laws. This is what the 10th Amendment is for. Any power not delegated to the federal government shall be left to the states. So states, let's take abortion, for instance. The Roe v. Wade is bullshit and should be stricken off of the books. It is bad law. There is no constitutional right in 1 through 10. There is no constitutional right to abortion. It does not expressly say women have the right to kill an unborn child. There is nowhere in there, in those fucking laws, that says that. What the Supreme Court did, and even Ruth Bader Ginsburg agrees with this, they wrote into law, they legislated from the bench. So, states can make any law they want, provided it does not go through the amendments 1 through 10 and the other fucking ones that we have as well now. So, if a state wanted to, say, outlaw abortion, a state can do that. If a state wanted to make abortion legal, a state can do that. Now, the federal government, i.e., your House of Representatives and your state Senate, can say, hey, we want to make an amendment that legalizes abortion. They can do that. They can call to a vote on making a new amendment that states abortion is legal, you get to kill babies. And then they get to vote on it. And if it passes the representatives, then goes to the Senate. And then I think you need like 3/4 of the Senate to ratify a constitutional amendment. So you would need 75 senators that sign on to baby killing is okay. And then you now have a federal law that says abortion is legal. And a state cannot put in a law that says abortions are illegal. That's what the federal government should be doing. I don't know what the fuck they're doing. They're running rampant with stupid. Anyway, this got onto a giant rant about bullshit. Fauci's an asshole. Fuck that guy. He should be treason. Treason is not thrown around enough.
He's incompetent. He has done things backhanded, and yes, should be looked at as treasonous acts against this country and the people that have been paying him in trust. Well, I don't trust any of those motherfuckers. If you're getting paid by my tax dollars, go fuck yourself.
Yep.
Unless you're like a decent cop or something, or like a fucking social worker or something.
So
That
let's,
burp
I
is
guess,
for Dr. Fauci. Fuck
yeah.
you.
Let's talk about this. CNN runs interference for Dr. Fauci after email scandal.
Oh yeah.
So some of you may or may not have even heard that emails leaked from not leaked, but were FOIA requested.
No, because the average human looking it up will not see it.
Yep. So, amid the release or the recent frenzy of FOIA email releasing or revealing that Dr. Fauci was warned by NIH scientists in February about the possibility of lab leak, CNN found itself excited only by Fauci's honesty. And here's a quote.
I just hold on one second, just so people know. All the news outlets that have the emails were only given a certain amount of emails each, and I don't know if all of them have the same shit either.
Yeah.
So this is very much a fucking show.
Yep.
There you go.
So this is the amazing media we have in this country. And here's a quote. While many federal government staffers prefer the phone to email, this correspondence offers a rare glimpse into Fauci's frantic schedule and polite, to-the-point demeanor during the time he emerged as a rare source of frank honesty within the Trump administration's COVID-19 task force.
Who quoted
Let me read
it?
that again.
Who quoted it?
Let me
It
read
says it
that
right
again.
there.
Who quoted it?
CNN. This
Oh.
is all CNN.
Yeah. So let me read it again. While many federal government staffers prefer the phone to email, this correspondence offers a rare glimpse into Fauci's frantic schedule and polite, to-the-point demeanor during the time he emerged as a rare source of frank honesty within the Trump administration's COVID-19 task force. I personally have lived a long, storied life. Lived here on this earth for 30 years. Been politically conscious for the past 6 or 7 years. I personally have never seen such unmitigated bullshit in my entire life. Let's just talk about all the things Trump was correct on. Trump said it came from a lab. That turned out to be true. The media lied about it. Let's talk about masks. Trump said masks may not be effective, may be effective, but you probably don't need one. Also true, because you only need one if you're infected. Let's talk about hydroxychloroquine.
Per Dr. Fauci. You only need one if you're infected. Per Dr. Fauci.
Per Dr. Fauci. Let's talk about hydroxychloroquine. Fauci said, no, don't take that. You're going to kill yourself with it. Turns out it actually was a somewhat effective countermeasure against coronavirus.
It's exactly what they're using.
Yep. Let's talk about lockdowns. Donald Trump said we need to get this country back on the road. This lockdown isn't helping anything. We need to get everyone back to work. Dr. Fauci said, oh, no, we need to fucking keep locked down for the next 100 years so the economy can go to shit and everyone can fucking kill themselves and overdose on drugs and fucking suicide themselves.
And what's happening now? We're going into a recession now that's going to be worse than 2008. And if you weren't an adult in 2008 and didn't work a 9 to 5 in 2008, get ready, strap in, because it's time to get hungry.
Yep.
Shit's stupid as fuck, man.
I mean, it's the amount of quote unquote frank honesty within the Trump administration's COVID-19 task force is only because you fucking said every goddamn thing Donald Trump said was a fucking lie. Literally anything the fucking orange Cheeto fucking dictator said was immediately deemed a fucking flat out lie by you fucks. You absolute fucks in the media who can sit there and look at the American people with a straight fucking face and even have a shred of dignity left is astounding to me. You pathological fucking liars.
And those you fucking little SJWs and little bitches walking around asking people if they got vaccinated, it's none of your fucking business. Don't go near them if you're fucking scared to get sick.
If you're so
you got a mask, you're good.
Exactly. I just cannot, and this wasn't just CNN that said, this was several outlets said stuff like this.
It was all of them, except for like your fucking OANs and your Newsmaxes and shit like that. All these people.
You might want to hop up close to the mic if you're going to talk.
All these people fucking went nuts, dude. Went nuts. And then all of a sudden it was the elections happening. Oh, that's not a coincidence? Are you fucking kidding me? All of this shit happened for a fucking reason. And still, all this shit's going to come out. No one's going to be held accountable.
Nope.
The swamp is going to get bigger and bigger. It's going to turn into a fucking river.
Yep. It's just amazing to me. Here's my entire take on coronavirus. Donald Trump was easily one of the better Republican presidents we've seen in decades, including Reagan. I don't tout Reagan as this great fucking, he was terrible on guns. He was terrible on fucking a whole bunch of things.
He was a fucking yes man too. He was being controlled just like the fucking rest of them.
Yep. So Trump came in, fucked some shit up, and they saw him as the greatest threat to, quote, their democracy, which just means their uniparty system of elites, of political elites that want to keep the American people from realizing we're being fucking rigmarolled into giving up everything. This fucking, your Chuck Schumers, your Nancy Pelosi's, your Lindsey Graham's, your Ted Cruz's, every person that's in office right now, it's just a uniparty that people, they just pretend to fight and bicker with each other to make us think, oh, something's actually happening.
Yeah, party over the people. That's what the government has turned into. Party over the people, and it's all a fucking show. What were you watching when all of Hollywood was legitimately shut down? There were no movies coming out, no shows were recording, nobody was doing shit. The only thing people could watch were fucking reruns, Netflix, and the goddamn news. And who are those people on the fucking news? All your stupid fucking politicians that are too fucking old to do the job.
Yep.
That swamp that Donald Trump was talking about draining, let's face it, I don't give a fuck if the guy runs again or wins or loses or what the fuck happens, because we don't need people like that. We need people that are like, fuck this shit. We need to do something different.
Yep. Well, and he was that guy. The issue is so my take on Donald Trump, and then I'll give you my take on coronavirus. My take on Donald Trump, he was the political wrench that the country needed to wake at least some of us up into realizing, holy shit, this is all sorts of fucked and something needs to change. But if you sign me if you can get me a constitutional amendment tomorrow that states anyone over the age of 65 can no longer hold public office, I would fucking sign that shit in a heartbeat. I would sign that shit and throw Donald Trump under the fucking bus to get Nancy Pelosi, Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, Dianne Feinstein, fucking Maxine Waters, all these stupid ass people out of office.
Yep.
So, coronavirus, here's what happened. This is exactly word for word what I think happened with the coronavirus. Donald Trump was on task to landslide victory. Landslide the 2020 election. The economy was rolling along perfectly fine. Everyone was, people vote with their wallets. Let's just be honest here. People vote with their wallets. If someone came out tomorrow and said, hey, I'm running for office, running for president, I'm going to sign a constitutional amendment that the United States cannot tax you any more than 5% of your income, that person would win instantly. Instantly. So, Donald Trump was on a track to landslide victory 2020. And you know who that's a big threat to? The political hegemonic party of the United States, the giant uniparty we have in this country. That's why you saw a lot of Republicans like the Lincoln Project, the 1619 or whatever the fuck projects, these so-called Republicans, you know, your Mitt Romney's, your who was that chick? Cheney, Liz Cheney, your Republican in name onlys. That's why you saw them go so hard against Donald Trump. So let's talk about who was most affected by Donald Trump. The Democratic Party was getting fucking annihilated by Trump. Who else was getting destroyed by Donald Trump? The Chinese Communist Party.
Yep.
The Chinese Communist Party, who was being tariffed into oblivion, who was being told back off of Hong Kong, back off of Taiwan. And people were starting to make notes of their Muslim concentration camps.
Yep.
So, Joe Biden, his son, 10% for the big guy, you know, fucking Hunter Biden. How many deals did he have in China where he was making money? Probably 2. There were emails that leaked that said, hey, 10% save for the big guy.
There was
Joe
phone
Biden.
calls.
Yep.
There was pictures. There was phone calls. There's well documentation of this motherfucker and his son and this whole fucking regime of motherfuckers doing this shit.
So you also have, guess who was the leader that Joe Biden spent the most time with during his time as vice president?
Was it Xi Jinping?
It was fucking Winnie the Pooh himself, Xi Jinping. Also, in case you're listening, Xi Jinping, when you come and try and take over the United States, and if you succeed, and I'm not dead yet, I'm going to call you Winnie the Pooh to your fucking face. While I'm down on my knees, stripped naked, dick cut off, blood everywhere, I'm going to still muster up and call you Winnie the fucking Pooh. You fucking Chinese communist cunt.
Nah. The Communist News Network. They're going to get us first.
Probably. So, to me, you take into account all that stuff. China gives no fucks about anyone.
Nope.
As long as their party succeeds, they will throw away 1 billion of their people.
Yep.
So why would they care about America? Why would they care about Europe? Why would they care about Australia? Why would they care about Africa? Why would they care about Russia? Fucking release a bioweapon. Which, if we're being honest, this attack, and I'm calling it an attack, is more deadly than a nuclear weapon going off. How many people have...
Yeah.
How many people... And it's going to be endemic now. This is going to be a year-long thing.
Every year.
Every year.
Every year. Not to mention the stuff that is starting to come out that we're not going to verify or anything like that, but we still don't know what these vaccines are going to do to people.
Nope.
You know, you don't know the long-term effects of what having COVID is going to do to people. So
apparently what happened during the Spanish flu was a thing called cytokine storms. Mm-hmm. So Spanish flu happened, let's just say 1919 Spanish flu. A weak version of it came around.
Right.
The younger generation, you know, they survived it. They got their antibodies, and 1920 then came around with a stronger, more deadly version of it. And cytokine storms are apparently hyperactive white blood cells, you know, the things that fight diseases and stuff and infections.
Yeah, your immune system.
Yep. And so it's essentially a hyperactive immune system that starts attacking organs and body functions. And that's what happened during the Spanish flu. This could potentially happen next year for coronavirus.
Right. Because now that it's out, it will mutate.
Yep.
And if you think this round was bad, I don't know. People who got it, I don't know if you'll survive the second one.
So it's there's a bunch of things that are scary that could happen. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong.
I mean, look what the flu and pneumonia does to the human body.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like those alone, that's fucking nuts, dude. So, what the fuck,
yeah,
yo?
so that's my opinion. The Chinese Communist Party released a global pandemic to hurt Donald Trump's chances at winning the presidency.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and Facebook and Google and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Jeffrey Epstein's fake death. Has anybody heard from Ghislaine Maxwell?
not
do we even
recently.
know what the fuck is going on with her? I think she was arraigned at least finally.
Yeah.
But that's a story for a different color or whatever.
But yeah, so Dr. Fauci, this unelected bureaucratic fucking garden gnome.
You have failed this country.
You have failed this country, my friend. From your AIDS blunder to your coronavirus to your swine flu,
all that shit.
H1N1.
Fuck you, bro.
Your anthrax. Your anthrax.
Yeah. And what's that one? Didn't we read something? I don't know if it was last week, but it was like H10N5. Some psychotic fucking.
I'll pull that up. H10N5. I'll pull that article up really quick because this shit's too damn funny.
I won't follow along because these
so
motherfuckers, dude. See what happens when you start playing with deadly shit.
Yep. Bird flu. This was 4 days ago. Bird flu. China sees first human case of rare H10N3 strain. A 41-year-old Chinese man has been confirmed as the first human case of infection with a rare bird flu strain. Officials did not give details on how the man got infected, but the H10N3 strain is thought to not easily spread from human to human, which is what we were told about coronavirus as well.
Right.
So it's getting to the point where Spanish flu, that came from China. Black plague, that came from China. Coronavirus, that came from China. H10N3, let's just call this we're gonna make up a name for it. It'll be called
Pandemic 2022.
Let's try and think of a racist name for it.
The
Kung flu. Well, because there were already so many that were.
Call it the takeout flu.
Oh shit! It's just getting ridiculous. I mean,
fried rice flu.
Yeah, it's getting to the point where we should probably just nuke China, which China's already gearing up to do.
Yeah, they're preparing for nuclear war with America because all of a sudden these emails leak. That was the first thing I heard because, I sit on the toilet for a while in the morning.
Yep.
And so I'm looking and I see Chinese leaders warn again, prepare for upcoming nuclear war with America. Like, what the fuck, dude?
Yep.
Over what?
Well, over the investigation.
Oh, because now there's going to be an investigation, but there isn't because they are the ones who are the biggest contributors to who's investigating.
Yep.
It's not like during the weapons of mass destruction investigation where there was people from the UN that went there and shit, Yeah. This is going to be an independent, the World Health Organization. Is that a UN run thing?
The World Health Organization is basically bought and paid for by China. I mean, the U.S. contributes a shit ton of money to it, more than China does. But when you take a look at the fact that you had this guy who was a delegate from the World Health Organization ignoring the question of if the World Health Organization recognizes Taiwan's sovereignty as a nation. I mean,
it's funny too because there's some articles about how desolate and gross that this wet market is, because it used to be this big thriving place and now it's just disgusting and this and that. But what the fuck does that have to do with anything?
yep.
You can no longer say that we know definitively that someone ate a fucking bat from this place.
Yep.
You can't.
And they've actually tried to trace back and find the reservoir, the virus reservoir. They can't. They can't at all. They've been trying to. Because if they can find that reservoir, then that can extinguish completely the lab leak hypothesis. And by hypothesis, I mean the fact that it leaked from a lab.
Yeah, right.
So let's talk about what this means, though, government wise.
That now there's no more Republicans and Democrats after 2024. It's going to be the doctors, the teachers, and politicians, and then us people, and it's going to be all of them running the country. And we're still going to be paying a fuckload. I was looking at an article today about the gas prices in Connecticut going up. Fuck, by next year, dude. Even here, I would guarantee you it goes up 8 cents. 8 cents might not seem like a lot, but when you go from, say, here to California, 8 cents is like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Your money does not go far when you start going west.
Well, I mean, inflation, we talked about it on one of our very first, called the Chapwood Index, which actually gives you the real inflation number. The real inflation number, not including right now, because for inflation, they don't include the price of gas or food.
Right.
For the inflation numbers, the U.S. government reads, they do not include the price of food or gas. In the Chapwood Index, they do include food and gas. Guess what inflation is, or was? It was pretty much like 11% across the board for like the past 15 years.
I remember we went over that.
So that's the correct and proper inflation number, or the more accurate, I will say, the more accurate inflation number. What do you think that shit's at right now? Inflation has to be up, 20, because they're claiming right now with the inflation number that the government uses, and that's just so that way they don't have to increase your Medicare, your Medicaid, your Social Security. They don't want to increase that shit year after year after year. So if they don't include the things that often rise, your gas, your food, they don't have to keep shilling out more money. So the Chapwood Index, that shit, we have to be at like 20% right now. 20% inflation, which inflation is the largest tax you will ever see in your life. Your $10,000 you have in savings, if inflation goes up, you no longer have $10,000 in savings.
Right.
Your purchasing power goes down when inflation goes up. If you have $10 in cash in your hand and all of a sudden things are more expensive, your $5 gallon gas goes up 10 cents. You can no longer buy your 2 gallons of gas.
Yeah.
So
it's going to be a thing, man. You watch.
Yep. Not to mention, we have not just inflation, but stagflation, because nobody wants to fucking work.
No.
Because these dumbass motherfuckers are paying an extra $300 a week so you don't have to work.
You don't have to work. They keep extending that unemployment shit. The states are going along with it for what? Because they know it's never getting paid back. The federal government can approve a bailout all you want. There's no money to back that shit up.
Yep.
You're basically spending what I like to call, when you're on your phone and you're playing a game and there's like money, your credits are building up and shit like that, and you're like, man, I got so much, it'd be great to have this kind of money in real life. That's how the government uses money.
Yeah.
That number on that page is not real. I mean, can you even fathom what a fucking $1 trillion looks like?
No. And we're 28 trillion in debt.
Right. Like everybody used to say, like, oh, Reagan and his fucking national debt and all this shit. Look at it now, motherfucker. Because if you were so pissed at Reagan, you could have got rid of that thing.
And Trump was also at fault too. His $2.4 trillion. I mean, an argument could maybe be made that maybe something had to happen. My whole thing with the first stimulus that Trump did with the 2.4 trillion or whatever it was a government problem requires a government solution. Correct. That was their solution. I think it was the wrong solution. I think if you just said, all right, everyone, we're going back to work, wear your masks if you would like to, everything would have been fine. Right. But
they didn't have to shut everything down like they did.
No, I mean, fucking Governor, what's her name? Kristi Noem in South Dakota.
Okay.
She never declared what was because you had what was the business called? It was what's the name? They called it a blank business, essential business.
Oh, essential business. Yeah, she never said what was an essential business.
She never
all business as usual.
Yep. She never declared what was essential business because, let's be honest here, my business of me fucking my own ass is still a business that causes me to have essential money to live. So I can buy my food and buy my gas and pay for my house. Every business is essential, including the drug dealer down the street. He is also essential.
Yeah.
So she declared nothing essential because everything was essential. She said there's no mask mandate. Granted, they have a much sparser population, but when you even include for per 100,000 or whatever it happens to be, they still ended up being about one of the best states for coronavirus response. Because they didn't... your elderly are most at risk. Everyone else is fine.
Right.
That's the way they treated it. She basically said, elderly, stay the fuck home. Everyone else, go to fucking work. And that's what the government should have done at the federal level.
Yep. Leave it up to the state.
That's what the government should have encouraged at the state level.
Right. And the federal government is not who should be using, you should be looking to for fucking anything.
Yes.
They suck. They don't produce shit. You're the one who produces everything.
Yep.
Just remember that.
So, yeah, that about does it for Dr. Fauci. He's a piece of shit. He should be brought up on charges of treason to the United States government and the United States people. Treason isn't a word thrown around enough at the correct people, in my opinion.
No.
I think pretty much everyone sitting in the current United States Congress, the United States Senate, and the White House, treason. Treason to the United States Constitution and the people.
Yeah, and they're not even doing what's in the best interest. That's why we call it treason.
So,
spit in the face of our fucking awesome republic.
One thing I learned recently, the America's first national bank was signed into law by George Washington, even though he opposed it, because Alexander Hamilton convinced him to. But in there, he decided to add the clause, if you expand DC's district by 3% or by like X amount of yardage, it will make my property worth more. So they added that clause into there, the first Congress, and George Washington signed the bill because it made his house price go up or his property price go up. Right. The very second Congress, the exact one that signed into law, the National Bank bill, they did not sign it back into law because the exact outcomes that, Thomas Jefferson warned about are exactly what happened. So we'll get into that one of these days, the National Bank, which is now essentially the Federal Reserve.
Oh yeah, another private owned entity, correct?
Yep.
Yep. That also is who gives
Treason.
the Secret Service.
Treason.
It didn't. In the Federal Reserve, the ones who created the Secret Service after Lincoln got shot, or
Potentially.
something like that. We'll just research a little bit and come at you with some more stuff we don't know.
Yep. So that'll about do it for today's podcast, I believe.
What the fuck, America?
Yeah. What the fuck, America? Why did we let these people do this?
Yeah.
Why did we let these unelected fucking white lab coats sit there and tell us we needed to shut down the country for the fucking flu?
Because we put our faith in education. We're all so obsessed with being on the right team. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Think about it. That's a
Everyone's
lot of
too
what it
tribe,
is.
and that's tribalism is what's killing America. It's the media, tribalism, and education. I don't have a tribe. I think myself more conservative, but I am a fucking radical individualist.
Just remember, when it comes down to it, if you're facing a murder charge, are those blue check marks going to be coming to your aid to prove your innocence, or are they going to
Nope.
fucking hang you?
Yep. Yeah, they'll if it bleeds, it leads. So any story that they can get that'll make them money, they don't care who they got to throw under the bus. And
For
that's what they're
sure.
doing to Fauci now. They're
Yeah.
starting to throw him under the bus, and all because
And he,
Trump's not
yep,
there anymore. So now they got to look
he
for an enemy.
he did everything they told him to. He read every bit that he said, or they said. He got the correct people where they needed to be. He's talking to everybody, saying the same right things, and now they're gonna hang him upside down by his fucking ankles.
Yep. So
So
congratulations, Fauci. You played yourself.
sorry you had to do that. Peace.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, peace out.
Later.